하늘로 내리는 건 나무 섭석은 물 산진물은 국내 신의 손발 씻은 물 은하동에 둘러
난 무사형 신방이 되신다면 우리가 일곱 오노이라 큰 오빠가 25에 돌아가셔버리고 그 다음 두 번째 오빠가 16에 돌아가시고 언니가 14살에 돌아가시고 그 다음은 혼설에 돌아가시고 또 오빠가 또 42살에 돌아가시고 그게신디 내가 막 어린 때 소아마비 걸려 주걱사랑 막 해놨죠. 9번 묻었당 9번 무들이 갔다 왔더니요. 태학둥이라 나가. 태학둥이 별명이. 태학둥이 빌레 하단 나 이름이 돌산이거든. 9번 무들이 갔다 와서 나가. 그러나 이제 막 주걱사락 해가 난 신방집이 수양 떨어준 거주게. 예, 신방 이쪽 큰 신방 어른신디 댕기막 이제 배웠고 예, 해연 이제 신이 온 거 그나 나가 신방한 그 큰 이제 나의 신의 어멍이란 하지. 신의 어멍이 큰 신방들만 도랑댕해서 옛날 만보 삼춘네 이제 중춘이 삼춘네 다 그 어른 신디 다 강문에 일현 어른들 또 이제 막 굿 잘 하는 어른 옛날 어른들은 굿 잘 해놨다 모두 다. 예. 그러나 그런 어른들 틈에서 배운 거나 아니 걔도 아프긴 아프지. 나무 위에 올라갔다 목 다친 게 목이 사람마다 목뼈가 7개인데 6개가 부러진 거라. 조상이 다 살린 거 아니. 저 신은 없다고 볼 수는 없는 거다. 응? 눈에 볼 수는 없지만은 영 일해가면 머리저몸으로 탁 운동행을 모임 골렌 하듯이 그런 신명이 나는 거라. 그냥 굿을 하는 거거든. 점 먹는 사람은 초장을 하지만은 점은 점쟁이 신디강 하지만은 굿은 신방 신디 해야 돼요.
Hello, and welcome to Live Your True Story. This is your host, Miok, and we're going to be exploring the lives of people who discovered their true path and are living very unique lives because of it. Not only are we going to be learning about the very interesting things that they're doing, but also learn how they broke from the mold and decided to take the adventure of living their own lives. Feel free to visit my Substack at Meok, that's meeok.substack.com, for a convenient list of links to all of the things discussed during our chat. And to learn more about my journey and services, please visit holdingcompassionate.space. What you just heard in the beginning of this episode was a shaman who was interviewed for my next guest, Joey Rositano's documentary. He is a fascinating friend of mine who lives on a small island off the southern peninsula of Korea. We met long ago. He's been there recording the disappearing shamanism and shrines on the island with its indigenous people. And what you heard in the beginning, if you go to my Substack, you'll be able to see the subtitles for that. But it is one of the shamans on the island talking about how she became a shaman. Joey is a dear friend. We always have epic, interesting conversations, and I was really happy that he was able to take the time to chat with us today and share the really interesting work that he's doing on crows and sacred trees, and just his connection that allows us to get this rare glimpse into a culture that is still practicing something that it's been practicing for thousands of years in a continuous way, like a real access to lineage. And when I was on Jeju, I felt a real connection to it, and it's always fun to have conversations with him where we're sort of comparing notes, between the ayahuasca Shipibo indigenous tribe in Peru and these fascinating people from my own culture. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. Check him out, check out his work. He is very earnest in his interest and respect and reverence for this sacred tradition. If you ever have a chance to go to Jeju Island, it is a fascinating place and lots of yummy food. So check it out and check him out.
How's it going?
Good. Sorry, just switch.
You know, I love asking people questions right when they're taking a drink. That's kind of my
it's
kind
the
of
way
my
to go.
vibe.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I already know you. So for those who are not as fortunate as I am, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, my name is Joey Rositano, and I live on this beautiful island near South Korea called Jeju. And actually, Mandy and I met here, I don't know how many years ago, but it's
Miyok.
sorry, Miyok.
It's gotta stay on brand.
And I can pronounce her name because I do speak Korean.
Better than I
Sloppily, but I
can.
do.
You can say my name better than I can because the O is not an O. I'm doing like the redneck thing, you know. I'm me oak.
Oh, I slide into the redneck thing all the time. So we met how many years ago? I mean, it's everything seems like it was less far away in time than it is. So I'm gonna say it was like 7 or 8 years ago or something like that now. Not that 5 or 6
Yeah.
years.
No, we met
Yeah.
in the fall of 2017 because I was doing my little Asia tour back in Korea, back to the motherland. And that was 2017 when I found my birth mother.
Okay. Wow.
So I did that
2017.
whole thing. So you never knew me before I met her because I met her and then I was like, I got to get out of here. And then I came to Jeju.
Yeah, no, you were in the thick of it when you got here. I remember very clearly.
Well, and it was brutal too because in Korea, like nothing's legal, which is why I think they're big alcoholics because you can't get high. There's no anything else. It's just alcohol.
Well, the thing is, soju is a psychedelic substance because, I mean, if you start drinking it at 6 p.m. and you just pound it for an hour, strange things happen. I mean, in Korea, as you know, walking around 8 p.m. and you see kind of mostly the ajashis, you know, the middle-aged men stumbling around, and yeah, I mean, they're in another place, I think, at that time of night. So they use
Yes.
it like an illegal substance.
Well, so soju is what even is it? Because it's not beer. They put it in beer.
Yeah, I'm gonna get this wrong. Apparently, the national drink of Korea now is soju mixed with beer. But when I first got to Korea, that kind of wasn't the national drink. But now they say it was the national drink because apparently, when the president went abroad, that's the drink that he served everybody, maybe in the States or somewhere. So I think Biden has drank this kind of soju beer like cocktail at some point.
That explains it.
That explains a lot,
He's got the
perhaps.
soju. But what is it? Because it's not beer and it's not like a wine cooler. And it's only like 25 cents a bottle there, right?
Oh, it's insane. I think it's $1 a bottle now, maybe. Yes, soju in its current state, Halasan, the one from Jeju Island where we met, is 21% alcohol.
As a super lightweight, 21%, that's kind of
Mhm.
high, right?
It is. That's the hardcore stuff. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's why they put a shot in beer. Okay, got it. So what are you doing in Jeju?
I am on Jeju doing a lot of things right now, a little bit stressed because I've been working on this documentary. I've been working on a book about sacred trees. There's lots of sacred trees here on the island. You know, I blog, I run a Substack. I teach part-time and do a lot of different projects. I came here originally as an English teacher, like many before me. And yeah, I've kind of made my life here. I've been here since 2006, on and off, and Jeju is kind of a second home.
And you got here by way of Barcelona
By way of Barcelona. Yeah. And
from Tennessee, like directly,
From
or
from Tennessee. I graduated university. I did 5 years at university, and then 5 days later, I flew to Europe with $500 and landed in Paris with this plan to walk to Barcelona. And I didn't get to Barcelona for about 2 years, I think. The walk never quite worked out. I ended up living in Paris for, I think it was probably about a year and a half in total. Went back to the States, finally came back to Barcelona, taught there for a year, and then ended up here on Jeju Island. And I'd never thought about going to South Korea. I thought I was going to stay a year, and it just kind of kept happening to me.
yeah. So you're like this white dude in Korea,
Hmm.
and I'm a Korean surrounded by white people in Northwest Arkansas. And being here, I meet a lot of people who haven't really been outside of like a 25-mile radius of where they grew up. So, what made you get out?
Man, what made me get out? I think when I was a kid, I spent a lot of the first 5 years of my life with a British family.
Are you
My,
serious?
I'm serious. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whoa, because I
That
did
this
too.
what? We've never
Yeah.
talked about this?
How have we never talked about this? I spent my most of my childhood from actually the age of 5 to 13 with a British family.
Okay. What circumstances led to this
They were
in your
my
case?
neighbors, and we lived in rural California. We lived in the Silicon Valley, but we lived outside of San Jose. We had this huge orchard. We had like 24 acres of land. And I think there weren't a whole lot of kids in my neighborhood. But so across the street, which was still kind of a little bit far away, were these two blonde haired kids. Their father was actually Welsh, but came by way of London. And so I grew up on like Monty Python. Like their grandparents would seriously take an old camcorder and videotape Monty Python from their TV and mail the VHS tapes. And so we kind of grew up on that.
Oh man, that's nuts. Yeah. In my case, yeah, my dad was a professional wrestler, which I think I've told you about before. Have I told you that before? No.
Am I being like punked right now? What's going on?
No,
I
I do
knew,
not see.
see, I
I
knew,
yeah.
I knew your grandpa was a boxer, like a big time boxer, but that's
He was a professional wrestler actually, and a big time pro wrestler. He actually taught Andre the Giant how to wrestle.
you're
Yeah.
messing with me, man. What's going on?
I'm not messing. I think we go deep a lot of the time, and we don't get to some of these general
Fine.
basic elements about ourselves. But yeah, so my grandfather, yeah, a wild character in Nashville. Everybody knows his story. But the announcer in the wrestling was Englishman Bob. And Englishman Bob's wife took care of all the kids. So we would go to her house, like, our parents were busy, mom was busy working, and I pretty much spent every day there since I was a baby to around 5 years old, I think. And so my southern accent was very much tempered by this. I of course have a southern accent a bit, but my brother and
Yep.
sisters is much more extreme than mine. And yeah, I just, grew up around these kind of crazy people who were involved in professional wrestling. And I think that planted the seeds with like a wanderlust, because my dad was always off in strange foreign countries wrestling, and he would bring back souvenirs and strange things from all the different countries. I think that's how it started, just kind of an obsession with the outside somehow.
So you're on Jeju Island, and Jeju is a really interesting place. When I came to Korea, Jeju was kind of the closest thing that I found to what I had come to Korea really looking for. I went to a few sacred sites. I went to like a shamanic museum in Seoul, but even the guy who worked there, I was kind of asking him questions, and he was like, "I don't believe any of this crap. I'm a Christian." And I was just like, "Oh God, you're not a tour guide. What are you?"
At the museum, the guy that
At the
ran the
museum.
museum. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, why are you here?" And he majored in archaeology or something. But yeah, the mainland is so modern. It's so highly technological. Seoul is in many ways has that energy of maybe Tokyo, or just, you know, a really, really high tech, energetic city. And then Jeju is so ancient. I know it's quickly changing, but it really fascinated me. And I felt like I had been looking for real Korea. And I just kept on running into McDonald's with bulgogi burgers and Starbucks on every corner and all of that. And then I came to Jeju and it felt like something real was there.
Yeah, you wouldn't be the first person to say that. I mean, it's a lot of people have said that, you know, they've traveled around Korea and when they arrived here, they felt like they found this place that was just you know, I think it's more traditional, but it's also just a green, beautiful place. And, you know, people kind of they feel like it's a place where they can find themselves. And the people that they encounter here are something different. I mean, the people are not as restrained. They're very expressive and they're just part of the place. They're just part of their lifestyle. The way the place looks is kind of how the people are. It's just more rugged, more natural beauty. Things aren't as organized. It's an island. It's an island culture.
Yeah, I kind of find that just like with anything, you know, like they say no man is an island or whatever, but you know, when you look at big pieces of mainland, those
Mhm.
are typically the colonizing forces. So the islanders are usually kind of the little guy. You've got Taiwan, and even when I was like in the UK, I definitely felt this separation in a sense from Europe. Yeah, and Jeju has this kind of rebel spirit going on.
Yeah, that's how it is here for sure. And I mean, they do not. Of course, they see themselves as part of Korea, but they're also separate. And, you know, Jeju Islanders say about themselves that they're too naive. They feel like mainlanders are often more businesslike or trying to, you know, trick people, or they don't have honest relationships with their neighbors. And they often kind of paint that as a weakness for themselves, like they're kind of easily led astray, or you know, they have their minds changed easily by the outsiders. But at the same time, that's absolutely not true. I mean, they stick to who they are and they have their own culture and their own language. And even the province is technically an independent province within Korea. So they have some of like their self-governing rights and stuff like that that's totally different from the mainland.
Yeah, so you're doing really interesting stuff there because you're really drawn to the traditional aspect of their culture that's kind of disappearing.
시절에 외정 때에 외정 때 미신탑 할 때에
네.
예, 뭐 음력으로 축기맹글도 하지 말란 할때 경할 때 아이고 그때의 저지 전설이 있었으면 진짜 참 외국 나라 고장 다 갈 거요. 그 천재 하루바님 입원한 옷 이제 써난 모자, 신 그런 거 이런 반도 백주님 입원한 옷 머리 기령 털리 영타운 털리 이만석한 털리 그런 책이 다 이 아는 보인 책이 다이 괴마년 괴의 짝에 딱 담은 옷, 책, 옷 이제 그 베리돌 다 담은 한 거를 불태하고
Yeah. I've been studying shamanism here, I guess, for about 10 years now. And as soon as I kind of dug into that culture, I knew that that's kind of what I wanted to do here. And no, it's a beautiful culture. I mean, that's definitely the thing that's kept me here year in and year out.
Was there like a moment in time when you were like, now I'm going to stay?
There was never that moment in time. It was more like, I'll stay one more year and I'll finish this project and then I'll go on and I'll do a master's degree, or I'll go back to the States, or I'll change my life trajectory. And it just, you know, it keeps going on year after year. And I think the people that know me, they say, oh, Joey's never going to leave. And yeah, so the moments, it wasn't like, a love affair that cemented itself. It was kind of an evolving process over time. And I think I felt that way pretty much the whole time I've been here.
Yeah, because you're a photographer.
Of late. Yeah, not for so many years, but I think I started about 10 years ago when I started documenting shamanism.
Yeah, what do you document exactly?
The thing that I document mostly is the relationship between people in the small villages and the sacred trees where they believe spirits to live. You know, these shamanic shrines in each village where gods are considered to live inside of the trees. And what I'm documenting is kind of the historical connection to the trees, the emotional connection to the trees, and just how the tree kind of works as like a central point in the village that collects people's stories. And, you know, it's really like the identity of the village. So I'm trying to look at how in the world is it that this other being, this tree that's several hundred years old, that is kind of surrounded by a rock wall and found in every Jeju village. How did that become such this important place for the island's identity? So it's more about personal stories, though. I'm documenting people's personal stories about their relationships with the gods.
So the gods live in the trees.
It's hard to get a straight answer about this.
Okay.
So you can ask somebody that question and they'll just kind of laugh. Do the gods live in the trees? Do they live below the trees? Do they descend into the trees from above during a ritual? Most people answer, this is kind of strange, but at the base of a sacred tree in a Jeju shrine, there are these three rocks on the ground. And these three rocks cover a little hole that's either naturally there or has been dug out in the ground. And most people believe that from the god's perspective, that stone and the hole beneath it looks like a traditional Jeju house, and that they're living in that house. But from the outside, it just looks like a stone. So when the people start the ceremonies, the first thing they do is ask permission to open the doors, which are the little stones, and they open the doors and then the ceremony starts. So it's more like these kind of anthropomorphized gods live in these little houses at the base of these sacred trees. But then other times they say the gods descend into the trees. So it's kind of all mysterious. It's not necessarily something that's so concrete.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about like this chicken or the egg type
Mm-hmm.
situation, where is it like the tree is sacred because the god is there, or the god recognizes that this tree is special and so decides to chill there?
Yeah, good question.
That no one can answer.
I think the mystery is the magic. You know, the
Okay.
fact that all these little things about the myths and the exact circumstances are debated, it kind of opens up the imagination a bit, you know. But that's something that I've asked and been curious about for a long time now.
It's interesting because in the ayahuasca world, the plants are the spirits themselves.
Hmm.
And I sort of have suspected at times, because they have these things called master plants. And those are kind of special plants that are also teachers and have this sort of higher consciousness to them. And there are ways to tap into it using ayahuasca through a shaman. I'm thinking about, if you gave it a few thousand years, if there might be some sort of separation that would have happened in the story where the spirit became separate from the tree somehow.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I've been thinking, you know, especially about, you know, after our conversations, it was just mind blowing to me to hear this situation in South America with ayahuasca and the idea that like the plants themselves were the spirits. Because yeah, they live inside of trees here, but they're kind of considered separate deities. The tree itself is sacred, but they believe that the spirits live within the tree. But there are also like, you know, little things that kind of hint that, yeah, there was something that came before. Like I don't think that the situation how it is now in Jeju shamanism, it's not necessarily the situation that's always been.
It never is.
Never is.
Well, And also, even when you talk to the shamans in the Amazon, they call themselves maestros. You know, they are masters, they're vegetalistas, someone who knows about the plants, they're doctors. But, you know, you ask them about their level of knowledge, they'll say, oh, yeah, I mean, it's been so corroded. You should have seen my grandfather. He was a Mariah. And that's a different thing. And when I was in Kathmandu, I was talking with a guy who he was, I don't know if he would call himself a yogi. He was definitely on the yogi path. He was older, but he had just been wandering around the Himalayas for like 30 years, like you do. And I guess one of the things that you try to do is you're seeking out teachers who have permanently resided up there, and they're trying to go deep into a single mantra. And when I was talking to him about ayahuasca, and he could tell that I wasn't, you know, someone from a major US city just kind of doing it in a warehouse or something, he said that in their teachings in the Himalayas that there are stories of yogis in the Amazon. And so I kind of think that maybe they are the Mariahs that they're speaking of, and that there's some common lineage somewhere.
Yeah, that's fascinating because in Jeju shamanism too, they talk about teachers. And the teachers, usually the gods that live in trees are not called teachers. They're kind of warmly referred to as like grandfather spirits or grandmother spirits or by their different names. But in the myths, like the really old spirits that kind of founded the universe and kind of came to the world to teach man, you know, mankind, all of these different skills, they call those the teachers. So there's like the house building teacher, the fire teacher, you know, the hunting teacher, but it gets really detailed. There's, you know, 100 different teachers, and that's found only in the oldest stories. So you kind of get a sense that this was something that happened before. And they even refer to those type of myths that way. They say that there are myths that pertain to the old world, the myths that pertain to our world now, and then the myths that pertain to the afterworld. And like all those kind of foundation myths, it's full of those type of teachers, which is really mysterious to me because they don't really pray to those teachers directly now, but they still recognize them at the beginning of every ceremony.
Do you think maybe they lost their connection?
It could be. I mean, it could be. I feel like something, you know, if you go to the different Jeju villages, every village has its own tradition, but like largely the traditions are similar. They kind of follow the same patterns. And there's a larger pantheon of gods too that they believe in. And everyone in every village believes in those same gods. So it seems to me that there was some type of standardization at some point. Like, you know, at some point, something happened at the island to solidify like a newer type of shamanic culture. I get the sense that there was something ancient before that, for sure.
Do you think they got separated from like a sacred mushroom or something?
Possibly, possibly, possibly. There are sacred mushrooms in the myths. So, you know, there's a hint of it there, you know, and they grow on the island. They certainly grow on the island. So people use them recreationally. And yeah, it's something that I think the local surfers partake in that sometimes, you know. So
And what do the myths say?
the myths say, yeah, I've come across two instances where magic mushrooms are mentioned in the myths, and they call them maldungi posot, which literally means horseshit mushroom.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and there are two types that look the same. One of them is active, one of them is inactive, and you don't really know until you pick them and you see the bluish tint, you know, the psychedelic sign or whatever. And there is a myth where one god who's trying to trick another god gives him magic mushrooms to kind of, you know, try to confuse him so he can pull one over on him. And the other god is smarter than the god that's trying to trick him. So he eats the magic mushroom, but it ends up being the inactive type. And he just kind of says, like, ah, see, I knew nothing would happen. So it's very vague, but I mean, you can kind of discern like what's going on there. And then there's the goddess of fate, Kamanjang Agi, who's this independent, strong woman in Jeju, because Jeju women make their own fate, and that's kind of the storyline of this myth. It's very Jeju, not really a mainland myth.
Thanks for listening to the free part of our conversation. To listen to the rest, become a paid subscriber over at my Substack at meeok, that's meeok, .substack.com. See you there.